Grief can make people do unthinkable things. My wife had just buried her mother when her brother handed her a stack of papers. He said it was just estate documents, nothing to worry about. She trusted him. She signed. And just like that, he stole her inheritance. But what he didn't know was that my wife, Emma, doesn't scream for revenge. She plans it. And when she was done, her brother wished he'd never crossed her.
Her hands were still trembling from the funeral when her brother, Mark, slid a stack of papers toward her. "Just signatures, Em," he said softly. "You don't need to worry about details." She didn't know she was signing away her inheritance, the late parent's home. I watched from across the room as Emma took the pen with shaking fingers. Her mother had just been buried 3 hours ago. The reception was still happening in the next room, filled with mourning relatives and sympathetic friends. Mark had pulled her into the quiet study, saying he needed to handle some paperwork quickly. His timing was perfect in the worst way possible. Emma was exhausted from grief, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She trusted her older brother completely. Why wouldn't she? He'd always been the responsible one in the family. I watched my wife, Emma, trust him completely. He'd always been the responsible one. He told her it was too much stress for her to deal with property management. She signed, crying, still mourning their mother. Mark stood over her shoulder, pointing to signature lines and flipping pages quickly. "This one here, and this last one," he directed smoothly. He kept his voice gentle and caring, playing the protective brother perfectly. I moved closer, trying to read what she was signing, but Mark shifted his body to block my view. Something about that small movement made my skin crawl. Emma finished signing and handed the papers back. Mark immediately tucked them into his briefcase. "All taken care of," he said, patting her shoulder. "You just focus on healing. I'll handle everything else." Emma nodded gratefully, wiping her tears. Weeks later, Emma mentioned wanting to visit the house. Mark's reply? "Technically, it's under my name now, easier for tax purposes." The way he said it, cold, final, made my stomach twist. Something was wrong. Emma had called him to ask about getting some of her mother's old photo albums from the house. We were having dinner when Mark's response came through on speakerphone. His tone had changed completely from that grief-stricken day. Now he sounded businesslike and distant. "Under your name?" Emma repeated, confusion crossing her face. "What do you mean?" Mark sighed like she was being difficult. "The papers you signed, Em. We discussed this. It's better for tax purposes and estate management. Don't worry about it." But Emma didn't remember discussing anything. She'd been in shock, barely functioning. Emma's lawyer friend casually checked the records. "He didn't just manage it, Emma. He owns it, legally." The shock drained her face. Her brother had turned her grief into opportunity. We were at a barbecue when Emma's friend Melissa mentioned she'd looked up the property records out of curiosity. Melissa worked in real estate law and had access to county records. "Your parents' house is gorgeous," Melissa said cheerfully. "I saw it transferred to Mark's name last month. Smart move keeping it in the family." Emma's wine glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the patio. "What did you say?" she whispered. Melissa's smile faded as she realized something was terribly wrong. "The house? It's registered solely to Mark. You didn't know?" Emma shook her head slowly, her face going pale. That's when we understood. Mark hadn't just managed the inheritance. He'd stolen it. That night, she sat on the floor clutching an old photo of her parents. "Mom always said, family comes first," she whispered. Then she laughed bitterly. "Guess she forgot to warn me about snakes in the family." I sat beside her on the floor of our living room, not knowing what to say. The photo showed Emma as a little girl standing between her parents in front of that same house. Her mother's arm was wrapped protectively around her shoulders. The irony was crushing. Her mother had worked her entire life to leave something for her children, and one of those children had used her death to steal from the other. Emma's tears fell onto the photo glass. She knew exactly what he was doing, she said quietly. He waited until I was at my weakest moment. He planned this. Her voice cracked on the last word. Instead of confronting him, Emma smiled. Let him think he's smart, she told me. People like Mark always overplay their hand. That's when I saw the flicker of something new in her eyes. Calculation. The next morning, Emma woke up different. The grief was still there, but something else had joined it. A cold determination I'd never seen. She made coffee with steady hands and sat down at our kitchen table with her laptop. I'm not going to scream or cry or beg. That's what he expects. He thinks I'm too weak and emotional to fight back. She looked at me with steel in her eyes. He's wrong. I recognized that look. Emma was a research analyst by profession. When she set her mind to solving a problem, she was relentless. Mark had made a critical mistake. He underestimated his little sister completely. She spent nights researching property law, inheritance rights, forgery cases, every legal loophole she could find. While Mark flaunted his new investment, Emma was silently building her case. For weeks, our dining room table disappeared under stacks of legal documents and printouts. Emma filled 3 notebooks with detailed notes, timelines, and legal precedents. She read every inheritance fraud case she could find. She studied property transfer laws and documented every conversation she'd ever had with Mark about their parents' estate. I'd wake up at 2 in the morning to find her still working, highlighter in hand. Did you know that transfers made under emotional duress can be challenged? She'd ask excitedly. Or, look at this case from 2019, almost identical circumstances. Meanwhile, Mark posted photos on social media standing in front of his new property, talking about renovation plans. Each post made her resolve stronger.
Emma tracked down the notary who witnessed her signature. The woman remembered Mark saying, "She's fine with me handling everything." The notary frowned. "But your wife didn't say that herself." That small detail changed everything. The notary's name was Patricia, and she worked at a small office downtown. Emma found her through the stamp on the documents. When Emma called to request a meeting, Patricia agreed immediately. We sat in her modest office as Patricia pulled up her records from that day. "I remember this signing," Patricia said slowly. "Your brother did most of the talking. He seemed very controlling." She pulled out her logbook. "See here? I noted that the signer appeared emotionally distressed. That's unusual for me to document." Emma leaned forward eagerly. Patricia continued, "I asked if you understood what you were signing. Your brother answered for you. Technically, that's not proper protocol." Emma's hands trembled as she asked the critical question. "Would you be willing to testify to that?" Emma called her brother one evening, pretending to be forgiving. He bragged openly. "You never would have done anything with the house anyway." What he didn't know, the call was recorded, crystal clear. Emma had set up a call recording app on her phone, making sure it was legal in our state to record conversations you were part of. When Mark answered, Emma's voice was sweet and resigned. "Hey Mark, I've been thinking about the house situation," she started. "Maybe you're right. Maybe it is better this way." I could hear the smugness in Mark's laugh through the speaker. "See, I knew you'd come around eventually," he said. "Let's be honest, Em. You never would have done anything with that house anyway. You'd have let it sit there, collecting dust. I'm actually doing something productive with it." Emma bit her lip to keep from responding angrily. "You're probably right," she agreed softly. Mark kept talking, digging himself deeper with every word. Weeks later, she invited him over for dinner, smiling, warm. "I'm so glad we're past all that," she said, hugging him. He left that night feeling smug, unaware she'd planted a perfect legal trap. Mark arrived with expensive wine and stories about his renovation plans. Emma played the perfect hostess, laughing at his jokes and asking interested questions about his projects. I struggled to keep my expression neutral as he bragged about getting such a great deal on the property. "Family discount," he joked, winking at Emma. She just smiled and refilled her wine glass. Throughout dinner, Mark's phone kept buzzing with text messages. "Sorry," he said, checking it constantly. "Contractors and real estate agents, this property management stuff never stops." Emma nodded sympathetically. "It must be so stressful. I'm glad you're handling it instead of me." Mark beamed, clearly enjoying his sister's apparent acceptance of the situation.
He had no idea Emma had already filed preliminary legal paperwork that afternoon. Emma quietly partnered with her lawyer friend, compiling evidence, text messages, recordings, documents, and bank statements. She said she wanted it airtight. No drama, she said, just justice. Melissa had recommended a colleague who specialized in inheritance disputes. His name was Vincent, and he had a reputation for being thorough and aggressive in court. Emma laid out everything she'd gathered over the past 2 months. Vincent reviewed it all carefully, his expression growing more impressed by the minute. "This is excellent work," he said finally. "Most clients come to me with nothing but emotions. You've built half the case already." Emma had organized everything into color-coded folders with detailed timelines and witness statements. She'd even found text messages before their mother's death where Mark had joked about getting his share one way or another. Vincent leaned back in his chair. "Your brother made one critical mistake. He got greedy too fast." Mark listed the family home for sale online, proudly boasting full ownership, clean title. The irony? Emma had already filed an injunction blocking any property sale without her signature. Emma showed me the real estate listing on her phone. Mark had hired a professional photographer and written a detailed description highlighting all the property's features. The asking price was significantly higher than the home's assessed value. "Look at this line," she pointed to the screen. "Seller has full legal ownership with clear title, ready for immediate sale." She smiled coldly. That's going to be a problem for him. The injunction had been filed 3 days earlier, but it would take time to process through the system. Vincent had timed it perfectly. Mark would already have accepted offers and maybe even signed preliminary agreements before discovering the legal block. The realtor would be furious. Potential buyers would be suspicious. Mark's reputation would take a serious hit. The realtor called Mark in confusion. "There's a legal hold on your property. Filed by Emma Hayes?" His smug grin vanished. He stormed into Emma's office shouting. She just smiled. "Legal things, Mark. You wouldn't understand." Emma was working from home when Mark burst through our front door without knocking. His face was red with anger, and he waved papers in his hand. "What the hell is this? You filed an injunction? Are you insane?" Emma didn't even look up from her computer. Her calm response clearly infuriated him more. "Oh, that? Just protecting my legal interest in our parents' estate." He slammed the papers on her desk. "Your interests? You signed everything over to me. This is harassment." Emma finally looked at him, her expression completely neutral. "Did I? That's interesting. My lawyer seems to think otherwise." Mark's face went from red to purple. "You can't do this." Emma's smile was ice cold. "Watch me." News spread quickly. Relatives who once sided with Mark started calling Emma asking if the rumors were true. "He stole from his own sister?" one aunt asked, horrified. Mark's golden boy image started to crack. Emma's phone rang constantly for the next week. Her Aunt Patricia called first, demanding to know what was happening. Then her cousin Bradley. Then her mother's best friend Helen. Mark had apparently been telling everyone that Emma was being difficult and unreasonable about the estate settlement. But now people were asking questions. How exactly had the house ended up solely in Mark's name? Why wasn't Emma's name on anything? What had their mother's actual will stated? The official will, when people finally requested to see it, clearly stated the property should be divided equally between both children. Mark had somehow gotten around that with the papers Emma signed. The family group chat exploded with arguments and accusations. Mark's wife stopped posting on social media entirely.
Emma's friend, a real estate journalist, wrote an article on inheritance betrayal when family turns greedy. She never used names, but everyone recognized the story. Mark's phone blew up overnight. The article appeared in the local newspaper's weekend edition. Melissa's journalist friend had interviewed Emma anonymously and written a compelling piece about estate fraud targeting grieving family members. The article detailed a case eerily similar to Emma's situation, a brother who manipulated his sister during their mother's funeral, legal documents signed under emotional distress, a property stolen through deception. The comments section filled up within hours. People shared their own similar stories and expressed outrage at the unnamed brother's behavior. Mark's friends and colleagues read it, his neighbors read it, his business associates read it. Even though no names were used, enough details were familiar that people connected the dots. Mark's phone exploded with messages asking if the article was about him. His denials rang hollow. He tried to deny everything until he was served in front of his coworkers. Emma Hayes versus Mark Hayes, fraudulent property transfer. The look on his face when he read the papers? Priceless. Emma had asked the process server to deliver the court summons to Mark's workplace at precisely 3 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon.
She knew he'd be in his weekly team meeting in the glass-walled conference room. I wasn't there to witness it, but Emma's friend, who worked in the same building, gave us a detailed description. The process server walked right into the conference room, interrupted the meeting, and asked, "Are you Mark Hayes?" in front of his boss and 6 colleagues. Mark had no choice but to accept the papers. His hand shook as he read the case title and saw his own sister's name listed as the plaintiff. His boss asked if everything was okay. Mark muttered something about a family misunderstanding and excused himself. The entire office was buzzing with gossip within 10 minutes. In court, Mark tried to fake remorse. It was a misunderstanding, but the judge frowned when the recording played, his own voice mocking Emma. "She's too emotional to handle property." The courtroom went silent. The preliminary hearing was held on a cold Wednesday morning. Mark arrived with his own lawyer, a nervous-looking man who clearly knew his client's case was weak. Mark wore an expensive suit and practiced his sorrowful expression. When called to speak, he painted himself as the responsible older brother just trying to help his grief-stricken sister. "I only wanted to protect her from the stress," he told the judge earnestly. Then Vincent played the recorded phone conversation. Mark's voice filled the courtroom, dripping with smugness and contempt. "You never would have done anything with the house anyway. Let's be honest, Em." The judge's expression hardened with each word. Mark's face went white as he realized what was happening. His lawyer closed his eyes in defeat. Emma presented the notary's testimony, the text messages, and every manipulative word he'd ever sent. The judge leaned back slowly. "Mr. Hayes, it appears you've taken advantage of your sister's grief." Vincent methodically walked through each piece of evidence. Patricia, the notary, testified about the irregular signing process and Mark's controlling behavior. Text messages were displayed on the courtroom screen showing Mark's plans to secure the property before her mother even passed away. Bank statements revealed Mark had already taken out a loan against the property value. Email exchanges showed him researching how to transfer property without co-owner consent. The judge reviewed Emma's signature on the documents, comparing it to her normal signature. "Mrs. Hayes, is this your typical signature?" the judge asked. "No, Your Honor. That day I could barely hold the pen steady. I was shaking from grief." The judge studied the shaky, irregular signature carefully. His jaw tightened. For the first time, Mark looked shaken. He tried to whisper apologies during recess. Emma just stared at him. "You taught me to sign things without reading, remember?" Then she walked away. During the 15-minute recess, Mark approached Emma in the courthouse hallway. His lawyer had clearly advised him to try reconciliation. "Em, please," he said quietly, reaching for her arm. "We can work this out without dragging it through court. I'll give you money, or we can split everything 50-50 going forward." Emma pulled her arm away from his touch. She looked at him with an expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, not hurt. Something colder. "You stood over me at Mom's funeral. You watched me cry and signed papers I couldn't even see clearly through my tears. You planned it perfectly." Mark opened his mouth to speak, but Emma wasn't finished. "You taught me to trust you, then used that trust to steal from me. Consider this your education in consequences." She turned and walked away without looking back. The judge ruled in Emma's favor. The property was legally reinstated to her name. Mark was fined for fraud and ordered to repay legal costs. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Justice finally served. The final ruling came 2 weeks later. The judge had reviewed all evidence and made his decision clear and unambiguous. The court finds that Mr. Mark Hayes knowingly and deliberately defrauded his sister during a period of extreme emotional vulnerability. The property transfer is hereby declared null and void. Full ownership is restored to Mrs. Emma Hayes as should have been properly executed according to the deceased's will. The gavel came down hard. Mark sat frozen in his seat as the judge continued. Furthermore, Mr. Hayes is ordered to pay a fine of $15,000 for fraudulent property transfer and will cover all legal costs incurred by the plaintiff. The judge looked directly at Mark with clear disapproval. "Sir, you betrayed family trust in the worst possible way. This court hopes you reflect deeply on your actions."
But here's the kicker. Emma had quietly restructured the property deed months earlier, placing it under a charity foundation in their parents' name.
The house was never really hers again. It belonged to their legacy. While the legal battle was ongoing, Emma had been working on something else entirely. She'd consulted with estate planners and charity lawyers about creating a foundation. 2 weeks before the final court ruling, Emma had established the Hayes Family Memorial Foundation, with herself as the managing director but not the owner. The foundation's purpose was to provide community resources in honor of her parents' memory. The moment the property was legally returned to her name, Emma transferred it directly to the foundation. She'd never wanted the house for herself. She just wanted to make sure Mark could never profit from his betrayal. The house would serve the community her parents had loved. Mark's theft had accomplished nothing except exposing his true character. At the next family gathering, everyone avoided Mark. Emma walked in, smiling gracefully. "Don't worry," she told him softly. "I didn't take it back for me. I took it back so you'd never touch it again." The family reunion happened 3 months after the court case ended. It was their annual summer barbecue, hosted by Aunt Patricia. Mark arrived late and alone. His wife had filed for divorce shortly after the court ruling. He stood awkwardly near the drinks table, while relatives gave him a wide berth. When Emma arrived, the atmosphere shifted. People smiled and hugged her warmly. Children ran up to her excited. She'd become the family hero without trying. Emma spotted Mark standing alone and walked directly to him. The entire backyard went quiet, everyone watching. She stood close enough that only he could hear her words clearly. The house is now a community center, offering free tutoring and resources. Mom would have loved that. Mark's face crumbled. Emma continued softly, "You can't buy it, sell it, or profit from it ever. That's my revenge." Then she walked away to join the party. Someone at the courthouse had recorded the verdict moment and posted it online. Woman outsmarts her greedy brother in court. It blew up overnight. Emma became an internet hero without even knowing. Emma was at work when her phone started buzzing uncontrollably. Text messages, social media notifications, and emails flooded in simultaneously. Someone had recorded the judge's final ruling on their phone and posted it to social media with the caption, "Sister takes down brother who stole her inheritance." The video had gone viral. Within 24 hours, it had millions of views across multiple platforms. News websites picked up the story. Legal experts commented on the case. People shared their own inheritance horror stories in the comments. Emma's careful planning and quiet determination resonated with thousands of people who'd felt powerless against family manipulation. Strangers sent her messages of support and congratulations. Someone created a hashtag, Justice for Emma. Emma's face was clearly visible in the video. Her identity was public within hours. Her reputation was destroyed nationally, not just locally. Mark sold his car to pay his fines. He stopped showing up at family events. Meanwhile, Emma and I used part of the legal compensation to restore the house, now converted into a small community library named after her parents. The legal fees Mark was ordered to pay actually exceeded Emma's actual costs. Vincent had structured the case to claim maximum damages, and the judge had awarded them. Emma used that money, along with donations from community members who'd heard her story, to renovate the house completely. The old family home was transformed into a beautiful community space. The main floor became a library with cozy reading nooks and computer stations. The upstairs was converted into tutoring rooms and a small computer lab for kids who needed homework help. Emma worked with contractors and designers for 6 months. She kept old family photos displayed in the hallway, honoring her parents' memory. A bronze plaque was installed by the front door. Mark drove past once, according to a neighbor who recognized him. He sat in his car for 10 minutes, then drove away. Standing in front of the finished library, Emma smiled at the plaque. For those who believe kindness isn't weakness. She turned to me and said, "He took my trust for granted. I just reminded him, it's the one thing money can't buy." The grand opening was held on what would have been Emma's mother's 70th birthday. The whole community turned out. Children ran excitedly through the new library.
Parents thanked Emma with tears in their eyes. Local news cameras recorded everything. Emma stood with me on the front porch, watching kids check out their first books. The plaque beside the door read, "Hayes Family Memorial Library, for those who believe kindness isn't weakness." Emma squeezed my hand. "Mom and Dad would be so proud," I said. She nodded, wiping away happy tears. Mark thought he was clever stealing the house while I was grieving, but he forgot something important. She looked at me with that same steel I'd seen months ago. Grief ends. Character doesn't. He showed his. I showed mine. The house chose which one deserved to win. Behind us, children's laughter filled the space where betrayal had once lived.